Hi, I'm Mahila Wilson. This is Straight Answers and Gospel channel. In this video, we are going to talk about 12 tribes of Israel. And in two different places, that are a little bit different about these 12 tribes names. And we are going to talk about what are those two places, why there is a little bit different, and what are these two kingdoms, northern kingdom and southern kingdom of the kingdom of Israel, and what happened to those kingdoms. That's what we are going to talk about in this video. Specifically, when we are talking about tribes of Israel, we are talking about Jacob's descendants. So those are the only people who are Israel. So Jacob is Isaac's son. Isaac was Abraham's son. So Abraham had Isaac. Isaac had Jacob. Now Isaac married to Rebekah, and Rebekah's brother was Laban. And Isaac's and Rebekah's son was Jacob. So Jacob married two of Laban's, or his maternal uncle's daughters. So those two daughters were Leah and Rachel. So Jacob married Leah and Rachel, and Jacob had children with Leah, also with Rachel, and Jacob also had children with Leah's servants, who was Zilpah. Jacob also had sons with Rachel's servant, who was Bilhah. So Jacob altogether had sons with four different women: Leah, Rachel, Bilhah, Zilpah. Leah and Rachel were his uncle's daughters, who was Laban, and Leah and Rachel were sisters. Also, Jacob had sons with Bilhah, who was Rachel's servant, and he had sons with Zilpah, who was Leah's servant. So all these sons together are the names of the tribes of Israel according to Genesis 35. So first account that we are going to discuss about is Genesis 35 verse 23 to 26. Here there are 12 tribes of Israel is mentioned: Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, Joseph, Benjamin, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. Those are the 12 names that is mentioned in Genesis 35 verse 23 to 26. So let's talk a little bit deeper about it. So Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun were Leah's sons. Leah was Jacob's first wife. Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun were Leah's sons. And Rachel was his second wife, and with her Jacob had two sons, Joseph and Benjamin. And Jacob had sons with Bilhah, again, who was a servant of Rachel. With her he had Dan and Naphtali. And Jacob had sons with Zilpah, who was Leah's maidservant. With her, Zilpah, Jacob had Gad and Aser. So those were the two sons for Jacob and Zilpah. So those are all the 12 names of Jacob's sons. Also the name of tribes of Israel according to Genesis chapter 35. So it's a very simple account. Jacob's sons' name were given as tribes' name in Genesis chapter 35. That is Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, Joseph, Benjamin, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. Very simple account. 12 sons of Jacob who were mentioned in this account. Now, little bit later, after Israelites were slaves in Egypt and they came through Exodus, before they could possess the promised land, that is Canaan, for which they had this long walk through Exodus, and now they are ready to possess this promised land. There in Numbers chapter 1 verse 20 to 42, Numbers chapter 1 verse 20 to 42, again the 12 tribes of Israel is mentioned, but here the account is little bit different, not so much different, little bit different. And why that is because there two names of the tribes are missing when we compare it to Genesis chapter 35. In Numbers chapter 1, two names of the tribes are a little bit different. Those were Levi and Joseph. So Levi's name is not there and Joseph's name is not there here. Here the names that are there for 12 tribes are Reuben, Simeon, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, Benjamin, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher, Ephraim, Manasseh. Those are the names that is mentioned here in Numbers chapter 1. The names of 12 tribes are Reuben, Simeon, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, Ephraim, Manasseh, Benjamin, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. Again, there are 12 tribes, but Levi's name is not there, Joseph's name is not there. And why is that? Instead of Joseph's name, Ephraim and Manasseh's names were added. So Ephraim and Manasseh were Joseph's sons. So actually they are Jacob's grandsons. Joseph was Jacob's son. Now Ephraim and Manasseh was Jacob's grandsons, but their name was added and Joseph's name was taken off. Instead of Joseph's name, Ephraim and Manasseh, who was Joseph's son's name, was added. Levi's name was taken off in Numbers 1 because Levi tribes, they don't have any specific possession in the promised land. Why? Because Levi tribe was chosen for God's work. So they were taking care of tabernacle and all these work that is relating to God, and they were priests. So they didn't have any allotted place in the promised land. However, all other tribes did share a little part of their possession with Levi tribe. Also, Levi tribes were responsible for the refuge, city of refuge. They were taking care of those cities. And also every other tribe, every other 11 tribes shared a little bit of their land with Levi tribe as well. So Levites did not have a specific possession in the promised land. So Numbers chapter 1 is specifically talking about the possession of promised land and division of land and so on and so forth. That's why Levi's name is not there, because they didn't have specific part in promised land. Instead, they were taking care of, they were chosen to be God's servants or God's workmen. And Joseph's son's name, Ephraim and Manasseh, was added instead of Joseph. That's why Joseph's name was removed. Now, so that is how this 12 tribes of Israel was combined. So when they took possession of this promised land, that is Canaan, then the tribes who were allotted those land was Reuben, Simeon, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, Ephraim, Manasseh, Benjamin, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. Even though 12 sons of Jacob that is mentioned in Genesis 35 are Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, Joseph, Benjamin, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. Here, Levi's name is not there, Joseph's name is not there. Instead, Ephraim and Manasseh's name were added. So those are the 12 tribes who took possession of the Canaan or the promised land. But Levites were there, but they were spread all over the place. They didn't have specific allotment of land in the promised land. Little while after, when they took possession of the promised land, Israelites decided to ask for the king. So they wanted king just like any other nation. They wanted their king, a human king, even though God was their king and God was supposed to be their king eternally, but they chose to have a human king to rule over them. And then that was Saul, and after Saul was David, and after David was Solomon. So Solomon was David's son and he was a king. And then after Solomon's time, around 930 BC, then what happened was Solomon was doing wrong things. He was getting married to a Gentile woman, and he was building temple for idols and so on and so forth. So after his time, after Solomon's time, the United Kingdom of Israel, that composed of all these 12 tribes, divided into two nations. So one Israel kingdom, that was 12 tribes that we mentioned in Numbers chapter 1, now divided into two kingdoms. The northern kingdom was called Kingdom of Israel. The southern kingdom was called Kingdom of Judah. And what are the tribes who belong to each of this kingdom? Kingdom of Israel, that was a northern kingdom. Reuben, Simeon, Issachar, Zebulun, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Ephraim, Manasseh, and Asher. All those people belong to Kingdom of Israel. That was a northern kingdom. Again, Reuben, Simeon, Issachar, Zebulun, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Ephraim, Manasseh, Asher. All those people went to form northern kingdom, that is Kingdom of Israel. And southern kingdom, that is Kingdom of Judah. There are only two tribes left with Kingdom of Judah, that was Benjamin and Judah. So other than the tribe of Benjamin and tribe of Judah, all other tribes were part of northern kingdom or Kingdom of Israel, and southern kingdom was called Kingdom of Judah. And a little bit about what happened to these two kingdoms. So let's talk about northern kingdom. Around 722 BC, Assyrian kingdom came and took captive all the northern kingdom. When Hosea was king around 722 BC, Assyrians came and took captive all the kingdom of Israel. And a little bit after that, around 605 BC to 586 BC, Babylonians came and took captive Judah. But that didn't happen in one siege. It was happening in three different sieges. So little by little, Babylonians came and took captive all the Judah. But the interesting thing is, before Babylonians came and took captive the kingdom of Judah, they already took captive of Assyrians. So Assyrians were part of Babylon before Babylonians came and took captive Judah. So Israel was part of Assyria, so Assyria went with Babylon. So before even Judah can come under Babylon, Israel, Assyrians were already part of Babylon. So at one point, Israel, Assyrians, and Judeans all were under Babylonian kingdom. So after that, then Ezra and Nehemiah and all those stories, they came back and they rebuilt the walls of Jerusalem. Then they rebuilt the temple and so on and so forth. And then we know the New Testament story of Ezra. But this is a little overview or a quick review of Old Testament story of Israelite kingdom. So in the starting, 12 sons of Jacob were the 12 tribes in the beginning in Genesis 35. But after they went into Egyptian slavery, they came through Exodus, and just before they took possession of the promised land, 12 tribes of Israel is a little bit different there. Levi's name is missing, Joseph's name is missing. Instead, Ephraim and Manasseh's names were added because they were Joseph's sons. And Levi's name is not there because our Levite tribes did not have any particular possession in the promised land. After Solomon's period, all the 12 tribes who became a huge kingdom, a united kingdom of Israel, and they divided into northern kingdom and southern kingdom. Except Benjamin and Judah, those are the only 2 tribes who belong to southern kingdom called Kingdom of Judah. All the other 10 tribes became northern kingdom or Israel, and northern kingdom was taken captive by Assyrians, and Babylonians took captive the southern kingdom, that is Judah. But before Babylonians took captive the southern kingdom, they already took Assyrians and Israelites captive before they even came to take Judean as captives. So that is a little bit of overview. And now to just add to it, we know that our prophet, so our prophet who is Amos, we are learning about the book of Amos. So our prophet Amos is from the southern kingdom of Judah, and then he went to prophecy against the kingdom of Israel, that is northern kingdom. If you have any question, please do add to the comment section, or if you have any other information to add about the tribes of Israel, please do add. And if these videos are helpful for you, please let us know. That will motivate us to make more videos like this. May God bless you. You have a wonderful day.